All right, I'm going to show you how to do the TRS end. So you'll have your 04. When you're stripping the stuff, these are a little bit too small. Yours should have a, I think 14 or 12 gauge. The lowest one on yours will be what you'll use to initially do it. I would say go about a ½ inch down. So you don't want to just like completely squeeze it and cut through all your shielding. You will want to kind of squeeze gently, spin it around, just be gentle with it, and then kind of let up the tension and then pull off. That way you're not like pulling while you're squeezing. So we're gonna get our shielding kind of all tucked back onto one side. And keep in mind, even a hair of this stuff that is loose, that's contacting the wrong spot, will short it out. So I like to kind of stick them together like that, line them up, and then twist. Okay, so now we should have this. It's a little long, so I'll trim that back a little bit here. Now we're gonna go, don't go to the smallest one, kind of start big and see what works, but you'll want to get a feel. You can feel if it's cutting too far in. Then kind of hold the back end while pulling, because otherwise this stuff will start pulling through the cable housing if it's not kind of held. Okay. Kind of twist these together so they're clean. Now you're going to take your flux. For you, just kind of take a brush or something and sort of just brush it on. But I mean, I just get like a little drop just to get it onto the wire. I have my iron set to 300 degrees. It's been calibrated a couple times. I don't know if you're gonna need that. It should be close out of the box. Somewhere between like 250 to 300. I like it to be hotter. When you're a little more experienced and you can do your joints quickly, more heat is better. So everything should be tinned. Now you're gonna take the pliers, kind of shape this bottom one where it's gonna sit. And you want to trim the shielding wire back to where it is shorter than the clear housing. That way you know when you solder it down, it's not going to be over or close to the other joints. So that's how we prep that dual cable. Now I'll show you, this is a used plug, so it's not going to look perfect, but I've desoldered it. What I like to do on these is take my snippers and take that little tab off, because it just is another thing waiting to short out. And kind of open these up a little bit. This is a little tough because it has solder on it, so it's a little hard. You can do this one of two ways. You can leave these like this and sort of do little hooks and hook your cable leads into those. I like to do this thing where I grab it with my pliers about right over the hole and bend it back and then inward. And it kind of makes that to where they can actually go into the hole from straight on. I'll do that to both of them. So it kind of looks like that. And then you can kind of push them straight through, and it kind of makes the solder pool up in that little crater. Just make sure that you've not bent this side so far down that it's shorting out on that little tip lug. So now this, you mentioned like a vise or something. I would recommend doing what we do at the shop and what I do, which is grab some scrap block of wood and drill 1/4 inch holes in it, and it will hold all of your plugs. I'm gonna go ahead and prep this by just getting a little bit of flux in each little spot. For you, just brush your flux paste into the areas. Don't need a lot, just enough to help it flow. Then this should just kind of fit right into the spot. So you'll see now I have each one's kind of going into its hole. Yep, and you don't want those to stick crazy far out or anything. You can kind of snip them so they're not, if they look like they're sticking out too far. Okay, so everything's tinned. We have flux in the lugs. So at this point, what I'm going to do, this is a little weird with the camera sitting here, but have some solder ready. I like to hold the cable in place with one hand. If everything's hot and flowing, you should be able to get about that much solder on. Hold it down on there for a couple seconds, and then you have a good clean joint. Same with the other side. That flux is going to help it flow where it needs to, so you don't have to hold it on too long, and you don't have to worry about getting the soldering iron in the exact perfect spot. And then the last part I'll do is I'll kind of tuck this gently down under here for the ground wire to where it's not touching my conductors. And it should look like that. So that's how you'll do that end. And take your pliers. Don't crimp this too hard, especially when everything's hot, because it can kind of melt through the cable if things are too hot. And it might take a couple tries for you to, tries with heat on the iron, getting the heat right, just to where everything's flowing that quickly and smoothly. But that's how easy it should be if things are the proper heat. All right, so on this, when you're looking at this, the left side is going to be your left signal, that's the tip, and the ring is your right signal. So you can mark the other end how you want. We use like label maker heat shrink that just says left and right. You can label it tip and ring, whatever you want to do. When I'm making stuff at home, honestly, I sometimes just scratch a little L and R into the pancakes because I don't have the label maker shrink. But it's easy to tell which side it is. You can look down in there and kind of see which way it got crimped. So the Minicake side's way easier. Very simple. The one thing you want to make sure of is that you've got your heat shrink on both cables before you solder. And I have the exact same heat shrink right here as what I sent you. This stuff is great because it is really thick. When we use this thinner cable, the pancake itself doesn't actually crimp this cable because it's so narrow. This heat shrink has an adhesive on the inside and it's really thick, so it holds the cable and then the pancake crimps all together. So I get pieces about like that, not very long. And just put one on each cable. On the Minicake, do not worry about the holes on these lugs. We do not need to stick anything through the holes. Those are just there on all cable connectors. We're going to do the exact same thing to both sides of this cable. Just about maybe 1/2 to 3/4 inch long. Separate your shielding. Wire it up like that. Then on this top portion, leave about like that. If you kind of bend it to where that's in that shape, then you can kind of do all this with one hand with no issues. So we've got our flux. Just wipe your flux onto each lug, and then it's just going to help things flow so much better if you go ahead and tin these. So go ahead and get flux on each little cable, just a little bit, just to get solder on those. Pull some solder up on there, just about that much. And then literally just going to position these to where they're over the lugs. It's getting mostly my hand. Just hold it down over there for a second. This is really difficult with this camera here. I'm going to reposition a little bit there. And then get that ground wire on that lug where we have all that flux. Hold it on for a second. That'll be a little bit hot. Should just look like that. Sometimes you might, if you're, use too much solder, you're figuring it out, you might have solder creep up over that side and get up onto the tip. Just make sure that doesn't happen. But yeah, really simple. And then we're going to bring that heat shrink up here. I literally just position it to where it's flush with the outside of that. Because it has that adhesive inside, it gets gooey while it's warm. That is when you want to put this cover back on, because when it dries, it gets pretty hard. You can reheat it if you need to, but if you do this part while everything is still warm, then it will kind of squeeze it all in there, and it will crimp it tightly and dry that way, and then you have really good tension relief. Should just look kind of like that. I really like the heat shrink to stop there and not come out, because when it comes out, then you can't bend your cable until like out here, then the cable starts bending. So it's just, on all my setups, I put the heat shrink flush with the pancake. You just do that on both sides, and then you've got a TRS dual mounting cable. Pretty cool.